Imagine this. You open your mailbox expecting to find a few bills, maybe a letter from a friend, but instead, you're hit with a notice. A notice from your homeowners association, HOA, telling you that your grass is too brown, your mailbox is dirty, and your garage door is dented. Now think about how that could escalate into something much more sinister, an arrest. This all went down in Riverview, Florida, in April 2025, in the quiet suburban community of Creek View, where homeowners pride themselves on well-maintained lawns and pristine houses. Irina Green, a loving mother of two, thought she had everything under control, but little did she know. Her peaceful life was about to be torn apart by a series of escalating HOA violations. It all started when Irina received a notice from the HOA about a slightly brown patch of grass in her front yard. At first, she thought it was a joke. After all, her lawn was nothing outrageous, just a little brown, probably due to the Florida heat. But the HOA wasn't having it. They sent a warning letter demanding that she fix the issue or face further action. Irina wasn't the kind of person to let things slide. She immediately began reseeding her lawn, determined to comply with the rules. But this wasn't the end of it. Over the next few weeks, Irina began receiving more notices, each one more severe than the last. They pointed out her dented garage door, which had been there for months but never seemed to be a problem before. Then came the issue of her dirty mailbox, which, in Irina's view, was a minor detail she had planned to clean up but hadn't gotten around to. Finally, the HOA took issue with a commercial van that was parked in her driveway temporarily while she had some repairs done around the house. Despite Irina's efforts to resolve every issue, she cleaned the mailbox, sold the van, and replaced the grass. The HOA wasn't satisfied. Every time she thought things were getting better, another notice arrived, demanding further changes. Irina felt like she was running in circles, desperately trying to please the HOA, but it never seemed enough. The pressure began to mount as she realized that the HOA wasn't just interested in maintaining the neighborhood's appearance. It seemed like they were on a power trip, overstepping their bounds and enforcing rules that felt like they were more about control than community care. Then came the court hearing notice. Irina had always tried to be diligent about staying on top of things, but this notice was different. She never received proper notification about the court hearing scheduled to address these violations. She was left in the dark, unaware of the serious consequences. When the day of the hearing came, Irina wasn't prepared, and she missed it. The HOA and the court system decided that missing the hearing was a form of contempt of court. The situation had gone from bad to worse, and Irina found herself facing legal consequences for what she believed were minor mistakes. The final shock came when, during a routine traffic stop, Irina was arrested on contempt charges. Arrested for a dirty mailbox and brown grass. Irina was taken into custody and spent 7 days in jail, a punishment that seemed completely out of proportion to the offenses she was accused of. She felt criminalized for simple mistakes, something that had spiraled out of control due to the heavy-handed actions of the HOA. This arrest wasn't just a personal tragedy for Irina, it was a reflection of the dangerous overreach that some HOAs can have. What started as a few seemingly harmless violations quickly turned into a legal nightmare, and Irina became a symbol of everything that can go wrong when HOAs gain too much power. But this was only the beginning of the battle for Irina. Her arrest would spark a journey filled with frustration, legal challenges, and the fight to regain her freedom. After her arrest, Irina's life was thrown into chaos. 7 days in jail had already taken a toll on her emotionally and financially, but what came next was even more overwhelming. With the HOA's hold tightening around her, Irina was forced to face the consequences of missing that court hearing and the contempt charges she now faced. It wasn't just about the minor infractions anymore. Now she had a criminal record, a mark that would follow her for years to come. As Irina sought legal counsel, she learned just how deep the HOA's influence ran. They weren't just pushing for fines or minor punishments. The HOA seemed intent on making an example of her, pushing the limits of their power and control. Despite the seriousness of the charges, the HOA's stance didn't change. They continued to issue new violation notices, this time targeting even more trivial issues, as if they were waiting for her to slip up again. Irina's lawyer, aware of the unfairness, began to dig into the legalities of HOA enforcement. The idea that someone could be jailed over brown grass and a mailbox seemed outrageous, even to legal experts. The case drew local media attention, and soon enough, people from across the country began voicing their shock and anger over what was happening to Irina. What had started as a personal issue quickly turned into a public battle against HOA abuse. Supporters rallied behind Irina, calling the situation a clear example of power gone wrong. But while the public sentiment was on her side, the legal fight was just beginning, and Irina knew it wouldn't be easy to get her life back. She had to deal not only with the legal consequences of the arrest, but also with the emotional toll that came from being constantly scrutinized by the HOA. Each day she feared another notice in the mail, another battle that might push her over the edge. The stress began to affect her personal life as well. Her kids were struggling to understand why their mom was always upset, why their lives had become so consumed by the HOA's demands. Irina knew she had to fight back, not just for herself, but for her family and anyone else who had ever felt powerless against the overreach of an HOA. But the fight wasn't just about fighting the HOA. Irina had become a symbol of resistance, a face for all homeowners who had ever been caught in the crossfire of HOA rules that felt more like dictatorships than community guidelines. The emotional toll was significant, but so was her drive to make things right. As the legal proceedings began, Irina knew this wouldn't be an easy win. She was going up against an organization with resources, lawyers, and power. But her story had sparked something bigger, a movement to take back control from overreaching HOAs. Irina's battle had reached its tipping point. The legal fight against the HOA wasn't just about the brown grass or the dented garage door anymore. It had grown into a fight for justice and fairness. As the case continued to unfold, public pressure mounted. The local media had picked up the story, and Irina's case had become a symbol of the power struggle between homeowners and HOAs. Thousands of people across the country were rallying behind her, signing petitions, and voicing their support. The more people heard about her situation, the more they began to realize just how unfair and overreaching some HOAs could be. It became clear that this wasn't just Irina's fight. It was a fight for everyone who had ever felt oppressed by a set of arbitrary rules. Through all the stress, the sleepless nights, and the constant threat of more fines and violations, Irina found solace in her family and the support of the community. Her kids, though confused at first, became her biggest supporters. They joined her in attending protests, sharing their story, and standing by her side. As the fight wore on, Irina's resolve grew stronger. She knew she had to stand up, not just for her family, but for all the other homeowners who felt powerless in the face of the unrelenting rules of their HOAs. And then one day, the news came. The court ruled in Irina's favor. It wasn't just a legal victory, it was a moral victory for anyone who had ever been subject to the whims of an HOA that abused its power. The judge acknowledged the unfairness of the charges and the disproportionate actions taken against Irina. The arrest, the jail time, it was all declared unjustified. The HOA was ordered to drop all further charges, and Irina's criminal record was expunged. But perhaps even more significant was the public statement made by the judge calling for greater oversight and accountability of HOAs across the state. This victory wasn't just a win for Irina, it was a win for every homeowner who had ever felt bullied by an HOA. Irina stood outside the courthouse, surrounded by her family and supporters, her heart full of gratitude and relief. She had fought a battle that seemed impossible, but in the end, she had won. The victory meant more than just clearing her name. It meant that the power dynamic between HOAs and homeowners had shifted, even if just a little. For the first time in a long while, Irina felt like she had regained control over her life. Her victory sparked change beyond just her case. Local government officials began drafting new policies to protect homeowners from unfair HOA enforcement, and communities across Florida started reevaluating their own HOA rules, ensuring they were both fair and reasonable. Irina's story had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, standing up for what's right can make a difference. Irina returned to her home in Riverview, where her kids greeted her with hugs, their faces beaming with pride. Her life slowly returned to normal, but it was a new normal, one where she knew she could face any challenge that came her way. The fight had taught her the value of resilience, community, and love. And in the end, love was what got her through. The love of her family, the love of the supporters who had rallied behind her, and the love of a community that wanted to see justice done. As she sat down in her living room, surrounded by her family, Irina smiled, knowing that the battle had not only restored her freedom, but had also sparked a larger movement for fairness. And though her fight against the HOA had been grueling, it had made her stronger, more determined, and more aware of the power of unity and standing up for what's right. This was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, a chapter where the community, fairness, and love would always guide her path. If you want to hear more inspiring real-life stories like Irina's, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to stay updated. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light.